Hey guys, welcome back. Today we are tackling the rust treatment on the inside of the van. Now I don't think this is going to be a hard job, but I do think it's going to be so boring. So I am kind of dreading it for that reason. Like I mentioned, the van in its previous life was owned by a family farm, so it is quite dinged up on the inside, on the floor, up the sides, on the back doors, on the beams. It's kind of everywhere. So yeah, I'm kind of dreading it because it's going to be a long process. There's lots of steps. I've got to hoover out first, clean the floor. Then I've got to sand away any loose paint or any bubbling paint I've got a wire brush attachment that goes into my drill. Then after that, I'm going to use the Hammerite red oxide primer, do a coat of that, and then go in with the Hammerite rust paint in white so that it all looks nice and clean. So yeah, hopefully that's what we're gonna try and tackle today. The first thing I did was remove these clips that were bolted or screwed into the floor of the van. These were, I think they're used for if you're carrying like bulky items, then you can kind of use these clips to hold them down. And I went to B&Q and got a Torx 30 screwdriver for this. That was the Magnusson one and it was £5. I got this because it was before I bought my drill. I do actually have a Torx 30 drill bit, but I'm glad I got this because I can just keep it in the van. Then I went back to the petrol station to hoover out the van. Again, this is just £1 to do this, and I just hoovered the entirety of the back of the van. After I'd hoovered, I just went in with the same ultra grime wipes again and just gave everything a good clean. I wanted to make sure everything was clean before I started doing the rust treatment. Now I bought this wire cup brush drill bit piece to go on the end of my drill. I got this from Halfords for £4 and I'm so glad I did because I can't believe anybody does this job by hand. If you are going to be doing this job and you have a drill, definitely invest in one of these. You can see how quickly the paint is coming up using this drill. And this job was a long job. Like I say, it wasn't particularly hard, any of the steps, but because each step, you needed to wait between each step, it took about a week all in all to do. So I'm so glad I got this. And like I say, I got it from Halfords for £4. It's really hard to show you up close because you kind of do need both hands with the drill, but this is just to show you when using this drill bit how quickly the paint is actually coming off. And what you're looking for here is to get it back to the exposed metal. So you want to use the drill on any bits where you've got exposed metal, but also any bits where you've got bubbling paint, because that might mean that you've got liquid like water underneath the paintwork. Now this was the worst rust on this van. All in all, it wasn't too bad. It was mostly just kind of dings up. This bit I wasn't sure though. This bit did look a bit worse. So I paid quite a bit of attention to this bit. You can see how much kind of, rust is coming off there. And despite going over this piece several times, like you can see, I was struggling to get it back to the bare metal. It still had kind of like a little bit of texture on it. So I decided for this bit to go in with an extra precaution, and that is a step before doing any of the painting, and that is using this Corrust treatment. I got this on Amazon for around £7, and it just stabilises any rust and turns it to a solid, so it makes it go this like really dark black colour, which you'll see in a second. It looks way worse than beforehand, but it is meant to be really good for it. So you just pop that on, you let it dry, and within 15 minutes it looks this colour, so that apparently now the rust is now stabilised. So that I did on that area. Then it was straight into the painting. So here I'm using the Hammerite red oxide primer, and I got this from B&Q. It was around £12. Now it says to do 2 coats of this, but you have to leave it 6 hours to dry in between. So I only actually ended up doing 1 coat of this, but I was thorough throughout, you can see. Now, I probably did do too much of this primer. When I've watched people do it in other videos, they just kind of use it as touch-ups. I decided to do the entire of the wheel arches, the entire of the kind of this back bit, and the entire of the floor. The reason I decided that was because there was just so many scratches all over that I thought I'd rather just cover all of it and know that it's covered. I couldn't be bothered to kind of decide, should I paint here, should I not? So yeah, this probably is a bit overkill. I've not seen many other people use this much paint. Mostly people just kind of, how I've done on the walls there where I've just done little patches, most people just do that all over the van. But like I say, just wanted to be safe, not sorry here, and just know that it was all covered. I was really pleased how this area here came out because you probably saw in the first video, water had obviously been collecting in this part of the van because it had a lot of bubbling paint here, and it took a fair while to get this little portion back to bare metal, but it looks really neat now that I've gone in with the primer, and with the next step it looks really good. So this is what the van ended up looking like at this stage. It looked very scary, all being bright red, but it was a really good job to have achieved this and got it to this point. So then we let it dry overnight, and we let it dry for a couple of days. Like I say, it needed 6 hours to dry. And then I went in with the Hammerite white paint that I've been using throughout. This is the same paint I used in the trim video, it's the same paint I used in the roof vent video. And again, this says to use 2 coats. Now, you only have to leave this for 4 hours to dry, but I got a much smaller tin, you can see, and so I didn't have enough paint to go in with 2 coats. So currently I have only done 1 coat of paint. Now, I think that will be okay because of how much primer I've put on, and because I'm not going to have any exposed metal in the van. It was all going to be covered up either with carpet or ply. So I think 1 coat will be enough. You can see the red shining through. So I think if you're planning on leaving any bare metal, it's worth doing 2 coats just to cover up any of the red primer. But if you're not, I think, well, I decided anyway to only do one coat. Now you might notice in this video I kind of keep peeking over my shoulder. That is because I'm just in a public car park painting my van, and that's one thing I haven't really spoken about with the van conversion is I don't have, you know, a dedicated place to kind of convert this van. I don't have a workshop, I don't have a drive, so I'm doing all of this kind of in public car parks, and most of the time people will just leave you alone, or, you know, I've had a couple of people that are quite excited or interested and they come over and ask you some questions. But on this day there was a group of builders who could see I was painting the van, and also they could see I was filming it, so they were kind of making some like jokey comments at me and stuff, so I felt a bit self-conscious, but that is just the reality of this conversion, is I don't have anywhere kind of to do this conversion. I have to park up in car parks and work on it. That should be quite interesting in the next steps when I'm going to be getting huge sheets of ply. So yeah, if you don't worry, you don't need a workshop to be able to do this. You can do that. I've seen people do this on the side of the road, I've seen people do this on driveways. If you've got a friend that's got a garage, I just make sure to be conscious that when I'm using power tools or making a lot of noise that I'm not anywhere that I'll be, you know, disrupting people. So at this point it was starting to look, you know, back to being quite neat again. I was really pleased to have got this job done, got it all back to being painted and look quite white again. Now I wanted to spend a bit more time on this kind of back piece of metal. Like I say, there was a bit of the rust there I'd treated with the crust, but I needed to take those clips off to see what the metal was like underneath. So I went back in with my drill and just wanted to see if there were any other areas that I needed to treat with the crust before I painted it. And it was a bit worse than I was expecting. More did come off, and again I was struggling to get it back to bare metal, so I did decide to actually go in with more Corust for another section of this metal. So yeah, I went in with a little bit more Corust. Again, just wanted to be safe rather than sorry. It makes sense that this part of the van is the bit with the most kind of rust and water damage, because it is at the back of the van where the doors have obviously been open. After that second bit of Corust dried, I again went in with quite a generous amount of the red oxide primer. Again, I just coated the entire back of the van in this, and it, you know, made sure I only did one coat, but I was quite generous with the paint. Again, I let that dry overnight, and then I came back with the Hammerite white paint. Now this portion of the van will be left exposed metal. I couldn't decide whether to carpet it or not, and I think the fact that it does seem to get quite wet, I'm not going to, and I think I'd rather just leave it as exposed metal, and then I can always touch up this paint if I need to, if there is any water damage. So yeah, it ended up looking really neat, and that is officially the end of all of the prep work.